I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Tuesdays are my request evening. Thursdays are stories I like to bring to you. I'm also over on the TikTok if that's more where you'd like to view your content. And I think it's Jess Rose 5472. My Patreon is patreon.com/Jess Rose 5472. If you'd like to comment after this story, maybe subscribe. I'd genuinely appreciate it. Or if you just want to stick around and watch this story, that'd be gladly appreciated as well. Gladly appreciated? Very appreciated. But thank you so much. So we're going to start the story now. So, as the title says, it's the Heartbreaking Kriss Donald Story, and it absolutely is devastating. There's so many words I could use for this story. It's just, but heartbreaking just seemed to just sum it up. Just awful. Okay, so we're going to start with Kriss Donald himself, and then I am going to introduce some of the names to you, but I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible, but I will recap throughout the story who's who. Okay, so we have Kriss Donald, born on the 2nd of July 1988 in Pollokshields, Glasgow in Scotland. So it's a Scottish story. Okay. Kriss was born to his mum, Angela, and his dad, Alex. He's also got 2 sisters and 1 brother. I believe Kriss was the eldest. I'm pretty sure he's the eldest though. Okay. Now, everything I found out about this lad, and if you do watch my stories, you will hear me say very similar words to describe people in the stories that I do, and it's genuine. It's the things I found out about them. This boy, I can honestly say, everywhere I looked, he just seemed like the sweetest, kindest young man ever, to his family, to his friends, to anyone who knows him. He genuinely did just seem like a lovely, kind boy. Okay, like I say, loved his family, very close to his mum. His parents broke up before he was 1, I believe. And his dad moved down to England, but they still had a very close relationship. And he would see his dad, and quite often, very much in touch with him. But very, very close to his mum. Really close to his mum. She doted on him. Now, as Kriss started to get older, his schooling, he was said he was a very gifted lad, very intelligent, very, very, very bright lad. Great student. Teachers loved. This is what I'm saying. It's like everyone from every source that I've looked at just says he was just such a really cute, kind lad. Genuinely was. Now, Kriss, when he grew up, he wanted to be either a mechanic or he wanted to join the army. You know, he had lots of things, footballer. He had lots of things that he wanted to do. Now, he loved, like every other lad, he loved gaming, you know, being on his game with his friends, interacting with his friends, discussing the games. He was very much involved. I believe he had an Xbox, but he'd go out as well. He wasn't, you know, he wasn't like kids are now, let's say, just kind of stuck to a screen. He was out and about. He'd go and visit his friends, go around to their houses, they'd go out to parks and so. Just a very, very, very normal, sweet boy. Okay. Now, we get to Monday, the 15th of March, 2004. Okay. At this point, Kriss is 15 years old. All right. Now, a friend of his called Jamie Wallace. Now, Jamie Wallace is about 20 at this point in 2004. calls for Kriss. Now, Kriss is off school on that particular day because it's Monday, it's March, you know, we know they're supposed to be in school, and he is off school. And his mum allowed him to have the day off that day. He wasn't feeling great. He probably could have gone in, it's been suggested, but she let him have the day off, and he kind of helped her around about the house and stuff like that. But when Jamie called, it was heading to the afternoon of that Monday. And he says to his mum, look, can we go out? He wanted to go and see about a game. And his mum was like, yeah, you know what? Go on then, but, you know, don't be late. It was kind of quite an easygoing interaction. Now, him and Jamie head out, and they're just heading around where they live. Now, remember I said they're in Pollokshields, which is in Glasgow, Scotland. They're just heading around the local area, having a laugh, joking amongst themselves, all right? And we're just going to leave Kriss and Jamie for just a second, all right? And if you remember at the beginning of the story, I said I'm going to tell you a few names during this story. I will recap, but I'm going to introduce 5 people to you now, okay? First one is Imran Shahid, okay? Now, Imran is 28 years old. His nickname and a name he goes by and was known for is Baldy. Answer to that. Quite proud of that name, okay? And his brother, Zishan Shahid, okay? Now, I think I mentioned Imran was 28. Zishan was a year younger. I've worked out around about the 26, 27 mark. His nickname was Crazy. I just don't think they were very well thought out nicknames, really. But that's his nickname, okay? Then the brother's friend, Mohammed Faisal Mushtaq, okay, who's 27. Nickname Bex. Not too sure where that one came from. Then we had Zahid Mohammed, who's 22. Nickname Ziggy. Presume because of Zahid, maybe. And then we have Danish Zahid, who's also 22. Around about, I've got a question mark. I've got them between being 20 and 22. I've heard different sources. I've even heard 19. But they're the youngest 2 of the group, okay? Now, Danish Zahid's nickname, because they've all got them, is Ferrari. Did he come from money? I don't know. But these are their nicknames. I am going to refer to them by their nicknames during the story, just it'll make it easier. They're more distinctive, I think. But I will recap on their names as we go through. Now, these 5, the 2 brothers and their 3 friends, made up a gang called the Shielders, all right? Now, during the late 90s and the early 2000s, what I will say, racial tension in Pollokshields was at an all-time high, okay? I don't know if it still is. All right, I've looked. It's kind of murky, what you can find out, but I definitely know it was around that time. And this though, the racial tension was mainly between rival gangs. Gang culture around Pollokshields at that time was prevalent. Okay, there was quite a few gangs around those areas, and Baldy's gang, because he's the leader of it, he's the big man on campus. His gang, the Shielders, was a very known gang around the area. They were very, very violent, very violent. These are grown men. Okay, these aren't. If you suggest a gang to me, in my brain, it brings up images of anything from 13, 14, maybe up to 19, 20, and the 19, 20-year-olds are on the older end. Like, you wouldn't expect it to go beyond that. These are grown men running around with a gang. I just find it ridiculous. Anyway, that's the gang. The group were mainly up against was a group called the McCulloch Street Gang. Okay? So they're the two gangs we're going to discuss. The McCulloch Street Gang, I'm not going to mention names or anything else. But that was the gang they were most rivaled with, I believe. Although Baldy comes across that he could argue with himself in an empty room. That's the impression I get of this man. I don't want to call him a man, but we will for the sake of the story. Okay, so we're going back now. Remember when we were talking about Kriss and Jamie, where we left off? It was Monday, the 15th of March. We're going to go back a day, okay? And we're going to go to Sunday, the 14th of March, 2004. So the day before, all right? Now, Imran, Baldy, okay, he'd gone on a night out in town, drinking, said he was drug taking, but he'd gone out on a night out. I don't believe any of the other 4 members of his gang were there. He said if he was out with anyone else, I haven't found their names. Maybe he did go out on his own. But at some point during that evening, he comes across some members of the McCulloch Street Gang. Okay? Now, remember, I says they're rivals. He comes across them. I've heard it was in a pub. I've heard it was in a nightclub. I've heard it was just in a bar. So there's they're all the same sort of place. Sells alcohol, plays music. Okay, so it said that he was on the dance floor. In one post, in another source, it says that he was across from the bar. I want to bring everything I've heard from that situation. Okay. But the end result is him and this gang start going head to head in this pub / bar, whatever it was. And he's outnumbered. He's outnumbered by this group. And they start to shout and insult him. You know, it's a public humiliation as far as he's concerned. And he's not taking it very well. This man is very arrogant, thinks a lot of himself. You know, got himself beefed up. He's done prison time, came out, thinks he's the man. He's a big, big fella, okay? So he's not taking this very well, okay? So as the incident starts to become more hostile, one of the members of the rival gang, we do not know who it is, okay? But he bottles him over the head, okay? Now, I've heard he was bottled over the head, and I've heard a bottle's thrown at him. Okay? 2 things I've heard. All right? Either way, he's not happy. He's not happy at all. He's been essentially bottled. All right? So he's kind of, I presume, taken back. And in that time, the gang rush out of the establishment and jump into a car. All right, he chases them out. They shout and insult him from the car. Again, public humiliation. Not something he takes lying down. And they screech off in the car. Now, Baldy's left there, fuming, furious, that how dare this group? Do they know who he is? This is the impression I get of this guy, that he was more shocked that anyone had dared to do this to him. Did they, who do they think they are? This is the kind of attitude he's got. So he's losing his mind, okay? And throughout that night into the early morning, he can't let this slow. He can't let this slow at all. He's took it as the ultimate disrespect to his manhood. That's all I can take from it. He thinks his manhood's been questioned on this night. Okay? So now we get to Monday, the 15th of March, 2004. All right, so it's the next day. It's around about the early afternoon, and Baldy, his brother, and the 3 other members of their gang, I just feel every time I say gang, when it's related to grown men who really, it's just grown men gang. I know it goes on. I know a lot of gangs are run by older men, but they don't tend to be the gang. They tend to run a gang, don't they? They don't tend to be the gang. Anyway, they all get together, and he's still livid. He's absolutely incensed that how dare this other gang disrespect him, especially in public, where people now, he's took this that, people are gonna really begin to disrespect him now, because he's seen to put up with this type of behavior towards him. What's next? Who else is gonna attempt to try it on with him, and insult him? This is obviously how he's thinking. So they have no idea who it was. He's got no idea, should I say. He can't tell his brother and his other friends. He can't tell them who this guy was. All he can say, and there are 2 things he's sure of, it was a male and he was white. Okay? They're the 2 things he's sure of. He just doesn't know who it was. All right? So they're sitting there and they're discussing it, and they're trying to, think who it could be. And, they're getting, he's roiling the group up now. He's rolled his brother up. Crazy, crazy's getting rolled up now. The others are getting rolled up, and he says, right, okay, get the tools out. So they get a bag of tools consisting of knives, a hammer, screwdriver. They get all this together and they go out on the warpath. They're out for blood now. You can't possibly just put this down to he was drunk. He was also aggressive, and he came off the worst. He can't deal with that. His ego would not allow that. Okay. So we get to around 3 p.m. All right. The gang go out. They pick up a stolen car. It's like a silver Mercedes. And they begin driving around, searching for any member of the McCulloch Street gang. Any member. It doesn't matter if it's the guy who threw the bottle to him. It doesn't matter. Just any member of that gang's going to get it now. Okay? And through utter rage and frustration, and not being able to find any members of the rival gang. Now, when I looked at this, it's around 3 p.m. Okay? Now, I know this group are out quite early, but it doesn't strike me that many gangs would be out at 3 p.m. on a Monday if they've been out the night before drinking. I'm just saying. I wouldn't imagine a gang to be out before dark. That's all I'm saying. But he was very, very frustrated at this. So Baldy says they're just going to get any white male. No. Doesn't need to be part of the gang. Doesn't need to be part of who attacked him in his mind last night. No. They just need to be a male. They need to be white. And that's all he wants. Someone's going to get it. And he doesn't care who it is as long as they're white. Okay? And then the car turns down Kenmore Street or Kenmure Street. All right? Now, this happens to be exactly where Kriss and Jamie were walking. Okay? Just walking along, you know, no stress, no bother, chatting, laughing in their own little world, walking along. Said they were going to a friend's house to get a game, something along those lines is where they were headed. But they were just not a bother to anybody, okay? Not a bother to anybody. Well, the cars turned down this road, and Baldy tells the rest of the gang, I'm doing them. These lads were doing no harm to anyone. Kriss is 15 years old. He's a schoolboy. He's no harm to anyone. More to the point, he's not gang affiliated in any way, shape or form. Neither is Jamie. Neither one of them. He's got no interest in that life. He never has. His friends aren't gang affiliated. He's not part of that life whatsoever. He's a good boy, and so is Jamie. Okay? So Baldy jumps out of the car and ambushes both of them. All right? I can't imagine. Now, Kriss, let me tell you about Kriss and Jamie, but let me talk about Kriss, all right? He's tiny. He's 15 years old, but he's not a big lad. He's not. I've seen 15-year-olds, okay? And they can be quite big lads. I mean, no matter how big a 15-year-old, they were never going to stand a chance against this group. But Kriss he wasn't a big lad. And neither is Jamie, okay? So jumps out the car, Baldy does, and he ambushes her. The rest quickly get out of the car behind him. I can't imagine seeing 5 grown men, big men, especially Baldy, real big, intimidating fella, okay? And basically shouting and berates the pair of them, basically accusing them of being part of the McCulloch Street gang, okay? He's still convinced. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He's just, because they're white, they must be related to this gang. Now, Baldy knew, he said he possibly knew it wasn't them. He just didn't care. Someone had to pay for this. Someone had to pay for the disrespect that was shown to him the night before, okay? Now, Kriss is terrified, absolutely terrified, and he's screaming, I'm only 15. I don't know that gang. I'm not part of anything. You know, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know you. I don't know who you are. Now, he didn't know who Baldy was, but Jamie did. He didn't know him as in because of the gang. He didn't know him because he had any affiliation. He just knew of him. And he knew how dangerous this gang was. So Jamie was terrified for a different reason. He knew just how bad this could get. And all the time, Kriss is screaming. He's like, it's got nothing to do with me. Jamie's also saying the same thing. He's like, look, we have nothing to do with that. You know, leave us alone. So the gang begin to drag Kriss into the car. Okay, towards the car. And at this point, he's kicking, he's screaming, he's fighting against this group of men, okay? Jamie, seeing his friend getting dragged towards this car, also tries to get involved. He tries to help his friend, but he can't. I can't emphasize enough. Please go and look. Look at Jamie, look at Kriss, and then look at this group. And you will see these lads never stood a chance. And he's trying to protect his friends, but he can't. He just can't. Okay, now, Kriss was fighting so hard at this point that a couple of the men start punching him. They start laying into him. This 15-year-old boy. 15-year-old schoolboy done no harm to anybody, okay? And they get him in the car. Now, just before they get him in the car, he grabs hold of these railings that were along the road, and he grabs onto the railings to try and stop them dragging him into the car, but he can't hold on. And they get him in the car, and Baldy turns round to Jamie, who's, I can't imagine how he felt in that moment. And Baldy turns round to me and says, do you know what pain is? Because you're next. And then they all jump back into the car with Kriss inside, and the car screeches off. Now, Jamie at this point, he runs back home, raises the alarm back at home. And also, there were witnesses to this that saw as Kriss was dragged into the car and the car sped off. I think the reason they started beating Kriss before they'd even got him into the car is because he was creating such a loud, what's the word I'm looking for? I've gone brain dead there. He was just creating such a fuss that they were like, people are going to start coming out. We've got to get him in the car. I think that's why they actually started beating him before they'd even got him in the car. So there was witnesses that seen him being dragged off. And one of them knew Angela, knew Kriss and knew Angela. And he ran round to the house and basically said, your lad's just been dragged off in a car. And of course, she's literally let him have this day off school and go out with his friend. And literally, I didn't get the impression that she was one that would allow her child to be out on the streets at 11 o'clock at night. It wasn't that sort of situation. She says to him, you can go out, don't be long. You know, this lad was no part of any of that life whatsoever. I can't emphasize that enough. All right. So 999's called straight away. Strathclyde Police is the police station that begins the investigation and starts talking to the witnesses, talking to Jamie. Now, luckily, do you remember I said Jamie knew of Baldy? He wasn't part of that group. He was no part of the other gang, but he just knew of this group. So he could say, look, I know who it is. He could also tell them the make and model and the colour of the car. He was a fantastic witness to have, so they could get, you know, the search began very, very quickly for Kriss, and they were really hoping to be able to get him back as quick as possible. All right. Now, in that car, the gang, they were beating him viciously. They were beating this young boy viciously in the back of this car. Okay. And what it was, they wanted the name of who had bottled Baldy. And of course, Kriss is like, I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know who did that. I know nothing. And they just won't buy that. Part of me refuses to believe that they actually thought that this young boy knew anything. I genuinely don't believe they thought he knew anything. I don't think they cared. Someone was paying for this, and it didn't matter who it was. Oh, God. They pushed him into the footwell at the back of the car and was stamping on him while he was in the footwell. Now, I've heard he was being beaten back there. I've also heard that one of them stabbed him back there. This poor guy was just being tortured in the back of this car. And I just can't imagine how what he would have been thinking at that time. It's just so, so sad. Now, while the gang's driving around, they're calling people, associates, friends. I wouldn't imagine family, but just people they know, because they're trying to find a house to take this young boy to, so they can kind of torture him in peace. The car's not good enough. They want an actual place to take him to. They need a house to be able to do this at leisure, okay? And while they're making these calls, they're driving. They just keep driving. They know they can't pull over anywhere. They must know that the alarm would have been raised by then. So they keep driving. They head to Dundee. Now, Dundee's 100 miles away. 100 miles away, okay? And they're driving, and no one has got a place for them to take this boy to. You know, this so-called gang obviously didn't have many people that actually would do anything for them. So they drive this 100 miles. They know they can't find anywhere, and they start driving back. All right? Now, Ziggy, do you remember who I mentioned? Ziggy, which is Zahid Mohammed. Well, Ziggy was on a curfew. He had a ankle brace monitor on, okay? And he had to be back in his own home at 6 p.m. Ziggy did. I believe it was for brandishing a knife on somebody at some point, but he was on curfew, okay? So he's like, well, I've got to get back. It's just this childish. If you didn't know the people at the age of the people I was talking about, you would assume they were mid to late teens. They're not. These are grown men. And he's like, you've got to drop me off back home. So Baldy agrees, and they head back and they drop Ziggy off. Okay, he manages to get in before his ankle monitor goes off, so he's fine. He's back in his house. He's tucked up. So now we have Kriss in the car with 4 of them. Okay, 4 massive grown men. Okay, so while they're still driving around, Baldy gets them to pull into a petrol station. They fill up the car, and they also fill up a jerry can full of petrol. Okay, so they're still driving around, and they end up at the Clyde Walkway, it's called. And the Clyde Walkway is like a nature trail, and it's mainly known as a beauty spot for dog walkers, joggers, you know, picnics in the summer, like a beauty spot, okay? And this is where they end up, okay? And at this point, it's about 7 p.m. It's poor boy. It's dark. It's obviously now empty. It's March, don't forget, so it's cold. And Kriss is now dragged out of the car. Oh, he's 15 years old. He's dragged out of the car. And it's believed that 2 of them must have held his 2 arms, because there was no defensive injuries on Kriss from where he's tried to defend himself. There's none. Normally, if you were defending yourself and you bring your arm up, your arm would be marked. There was no defensive wounds on this young boy. And they beat him mercilessly outside that car. And then they began to stab him. Okay. Now, I'd heard they'd stabbed him maybe once in the car. Heard other reports that he wasn't stabbed in the car, but he certainly was once they got him out of the car. And he was stabbed in all 13 times. Okay. 3 of those severed main arteries, punctured his lungs, they hit his kidneys, his intestines. He was stabbed so hard it broke a rib in two. And it says that any one of those wounds that severed the arteries, they would have been, they would have killed him. Okay. But he was still alive at this point. Okay. And I don't know, maybe they felt that he wasn't dying quick enough. I'm not too sure. Although it already stopped off at the petrol station, so I believe Baldy knew what he was going to do to this young boy. And they pour the petrol out of the jerry can. At this point, they've got Kriss sat on in this this nature trail that I've mentioned. There were like these logs kind of piled up on a grass slope, and I believe he was sat on them, and they poured the contents of the jerry can over him and they set him on fire. He was alive. The burn marks are quite evident on these logs. You know, you can, if you look online, you can see it's horrific. Okay. And Kriss, you know, they left then. They left him to burn. They went back to the car and drove off. And Kriss, oh God, he dragged himself off those pile of logs and tried to get, now off the slope there's a walkway, and then just beyond that there's a lake. Now it was dark. His mum and a family friend said he wouldn't have known that park. It was nowhere, this was nowhere near where he lived. He didn't know that area, so I don't know if he'd have known that there was a lake beyond that, because don't forget, it's very dark, it's practically pitch black. But he was heading down the slope and there was a puddle, and he began rolling himself in the mud and the puddle. It says to try and put the fire out. Oh my God, just, oh God, such a shame. And that's where Kriss Donald died, on his own, in the dark, in that muddy puddle. That's where he died. Oh, just utter disgrace, utter disgrace. Now, the gang, they'd obviously left, as they did. They didn't stick around to see their handiwork. No, they left. And in the car, which they quickly abandoned, set it on fire. They burnt all their own clothes to get rid of any evidence, you know. So now we come to early hours of Tuesday, the 16th of March, 2004. So the next morning. And Kriss's body is found by a jogger who came across. And it said that the jogger, I think they thought it was like an animal as they were jogging up. They didn't know initially what they were looking at, the damage they'd done to this child. So police are called, you know, the autopsy's done. They realise it's obviously Kriss. Family's notified. Oh God, I can't imagine being his mum. I just can't imagine being his mum. The autopsy showed acute blood loss and burns to 70%. 70% of this child's body. Obviously, Angela and the entire family, his younger sisters, his younger brother, his dad, they're just devastated. This child's done no harm to anybody, ever, ever. They just don't know. They don't know where this has come from and why it's happened. It's such a shame. Now, the car's found by the police quite quickly after, because don't forget, they know who they're looking for. The police know who they're looking for. It's only a matter of time. They're searching for this quote. And even though they'd set fire to the car, okay, and a lot of water had been used by the fire department to put out the car, it still left blood spatter on the front of the bonnet, okay, which is where they believed he was held down while they stabbed him and they beat him. And when they done the DNA check on the blood spatter, it came back to Kriss, okay? And in the boot of the car, they found a leather jacket, okay? And when they done DNA testing on that, they say they checked the sleeves, collar, pockets, skin cells can come off, in those areas. It traced directly back to Baldy. The evidence they had was ridiculous, let alone the witnesses, okay? And you might be like, well, they've got him now. And also found in the car, the last bit of evidence was Chris's shoe. And it was quite obviously Chris's shoe. That was because the shoe that was found in the car, Kriss only had one shoe on him when he was found. It was only his shoe, I believe, his underwear that didn't burn. The rest of his clothes just disintegrated. Oh God! So they had all the evidence. Okay, they're trying to pick these group up, headed by Baldy. All right, but Baldy, crazy, his brother, and Bex, they ran. They ran. These three did. They ran to Pakistan. That's where they went, okay? And there's no extradition treaty in Pakistan. I think we spoke about this a couple of months ago when we were talking about Sarah Sharif. There's no deal between the UK and Pakistan where they would need to send back a resident of Pakistan who'd committed a crime here. Okay. Now, Ziggy and Ferrari, well, they were found. Those two did. They didn't run. Of course, Ziggy, I think he thought, well, they won't think it's me because I was back in the house. I was back in the house at 6 p.m, if you remember, because he's on curfew. But they found these two and they were charged with kidnap, and Ferrari was obviously charged with murder. Now, it actually became the first case in Scotland where he was charged with a racially motivated murder, okay? Because it was proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the only reason that Kriss was kidnapped and murdered was because he was white. It was proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that was the reason, okay? So in November the 18th of 2004, Ferrari, which is Danish Zahid, was found guilty, okay, of Kriss's murder. He was given life with a minimum of 17 years. See, this fella did try to say, I believe it was him, he did try to say, I was in the car, couldn't say anything. And it's like, well, where were you sat? I was in the passenger seat. So he wanted to distance himself from the beating that they were giving Kriss in the back. So he put himself in the passenger seat. But if you remember, the blood spatter was on the bonnet of the car. So he'd slam dunked himself without even realising it. Because if he's in the passenger seat and Kriss has been beaten and stabbed on the bonnet of the car, he's in his eye line. He could never have not seen this. So his excuse, he would have put himself in the back of the car and said, I couldn't see, he'd have been in the back with Kriss. So he was never going to be able to get away with this. Now, Ziggy, Zahid Mohammed, now don't forget, he'd gone back. So he was involved in Kriss's kidnapping. But he wasn't there when they tortured this lad and murdered him. Okay. So he was charged with abduction, okay, and he was given 5 years. Poxy 5 years. Okay, he went home. You're trying to say that if he hadn't gone home, he'd have gone, no, stop, this is too far, we're not going to do this, let's just drop him off. No, he wouldn't have. But he got 5 years, okay, as long as he pled guilty to the abduction and he put himself forward as a witness to when the other 3 were brought to trial, okay. Now, with regards to Ziggy, although he was given 5 years, he was actually released in 2007. He'd done less than 3, okay. When he came out, he changed his name to Yusef Harris, all right. But in 2017, he was actually sent back to prison for threatening murder on somebody. Threatening murder on somebody with a knife, I believe. So even though, so that says to me, like I just said, whether he'd gone home or not, if he'd have been there, he would have taken part in that. And he proved that where are we, 2017? So what's that, 13 years later? That he was still just as nasty. Okay? So then we get to the other 3. All right? Now, there was an MP in Glasgow called Mohammed Sarwar, all right, who was so disgusted with this case. And now, don't forget the tension that this would have brought to Glasgow as well, especially knowing this was a racially motivated murder. Now, what I'll say about Angela and Kriss's family, but Angela especially, she turned around and she says, look, I don't care what colour they were. I don't care. I have no interest in that. I just want the men who murdered my son. She wasn't interested in it being ramped up for the racial aspect. She just wanted their men to pay for what they'd done to her son. She just seemed like a... If you see his mum, you can see what a sweet boy he was, I think, if that makes sense. And it took them a year, though, but with the help of the police and Mohammed Sarwar, the MP from Glasgow, having conversations with the Pakistani authorities. It did take a year, but in July of 2005, the Pakistani authorities do arrest the other 3, okay? Baldy, his brother, and Bex, okay? And it's October 2005. So don't forget, this is like 18 months after this has happened. But they arrived back in the UK, all right? So the trial goes ahead on the 2nd of October 2006, okay? So 2.5 years later, all right? But they all have the 3 of them have the audacity, even with the witnesses, even with the evidence, they have the audacity to plead not guilty. Marvellous, isn't it? So they have to put the family through the trial. Oh, God. So on November the 6th, 2006, thank goodness, the jury found all 3 guilty of murder. Okay? And the same as with Ferrari or Danish Zahid, it was a racially motivated murder. That's what they they were found guilty of. Okay. Now we have Baldy Imran Shahid. He was given life with a 25-year minimum. Crazy. I feel like such a prat saying these names. Crazy, which is Zishan Shahid, obviously his brother. Life with a minimum of 23 years. And then Bex, which is Mohammed Faisal Mushtaq. He was given life with a minimum of 22 years. Absolutely shocking amount of time. I wish life meant life. I believe Scotland's justice system is very similar to ours. Very short amounts of time. I mean, this crime, these people should never, ever, ever, ever get out again. You know, Zahid Mohammed Ziggy already proved, even though he wasn't there, he proved that he's just as dangerous. He's not going to change. It was 13 years later, and he was still prattling about and saying the same things to people. Now, when they were brought out, I have seen the footage of when they were brought out of the court and transferred into, you know, the trucks that they get put into to be taken to prison. When Baldy came out, who's no longer Baldy, he had hair then, as he's coming out, he started shouting, "It's a miscarriage of justice." Really? Is it? Is it really? Crazy. The brother, obviously, he trying to give it the big man, but not until he got into the truck. Okay? And then Bex, oh, well, he just laughed as he was being brought out. Chris's family were there. They're not on camera, but it's said that they're there. And he laughs. No remorse shown whatsoever. Zero. Oh, now, in 2013, so I've got some good news for you. In 2013, Baldy in prison was actually hit with a 30 kilogram, I don't know my weight very well, but with dumbbells in the prison gym. His head, his face, his jaw broken. Okay? So I was very happy about that. He's been held in solitary confinement for a lot of his prison sentence. Obviously for his own security. I don't agree. Let him out in the population. Let him out there. I believe he tried to sue the prison system for keeping him in solitary, which was obviously batted back out. It was ridiculous. But then we got to 2022. He tried to kill himself then, but he wasn't successful. No mind. And then Crazy, you know, the one who had his temper as he came out of the prison and everything else, the brother. Well, he's been having to move from prison to prison to prison to prison for the threats that he gets everywhere he goes. I haven't heard much about Bex, I'll be honest. He obviously laughed after the fact. But Angela, Chris's mum, in her, you know, where they speak to the press after the trial, she just basically said it's over. It's just, my heart broke for her. My heart broke for this woman because her child wasn't running the streets. Her child wasn't in a gang. It doesn't excuse. There's no excuse here. I'm not saying, oh, if he was in a gang and running the streets, well, that's okay. Then I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, from what I've learned, she did everything humanly possible to try and make sure her son could have the good life that he had planned in his head. Look, say he wanted to join the army. She was trying everything she could do to ensure that. And just, the police do say, and they said, you know, it's quite a cliche and everything else, but it genuinely was just the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's heartbreaking. But these 5, I've no doubt, would have done that to anyone they came across that day. You know, they didn't know Kriss. They didn't know him from anyone. They didn't care. He was white. That's all they were looking for. A white male. It didn't matter what age he was. It didn't matter who he was. The fact that he was little and tiny made it easier for them. I'd love to know if it was a bigger fella, would they have approached it with the same, you know, let's go, I'm gonna get ya, he's gonna get it. I just do wonder. I don't know how mentally, as a man, a grown man with that build, how you as a man would sleep at night knowing that you did that. I don't understand. Now he's a band in Glasgow called Glas Vegas. They wrote a song for Kriss called Flowers and Football Tops. Now, another heartbreaking thing, there's a memorial plaque on the bench near where Kriss was murdered, okay, in the nature walk. And there's also a plaque on the fence that he was dragging onto on Kemmel Street, okay? Just, they're only little plaques, okay? The plaque on the bench, and a plaque on the fence. And the friend of the family says that the plaque on the bench has been vandalised. It's vandalised, okay? What sick person would do that? And the real kicker, the council tried to remove the plaque that the family paid for it. The council didn't put it up for them. There was no let's do a memorial. No. What they tried to do was brush this under the carpet as quickly as it could possibly go. The news channels, wow, the BBC, let's call them out, the BBC, they ran 3 stories, 3 reports, I believe, when it first happened. And then the trial, there was 1. That was the BBC. And they just tried to say, well, it's, you know, it's Scotland, it's up there. Scotland tried to brush it under the carpet. Oh God, it's just absolutely sickening. But the council tried to remove the plaque that was put on that fence. And the family friend, when she was asked, so why? I don't know. They tried to remove his little plaque. It's about this big. Now, in July of 2018, the family and friends did gather there for what would have been his 30th birthday. So it's still there then. But they tried to remove his plaque. What the hell? Utter disgrace. They didn't even pay for it. They didn't even pay for it. But I think it was a landmark decision to make it a racially motivated or title it a racially motivated murder, because that's what it was. You know, I think the courts did that. I think the press really should have done their part and called it for what it was as well. It was a racially motivated murder of a child because he was white. That was it. No other criteria other than he was male, sorry. All they were looking for was male and white. That was it. It didn't matter who it was. Now, I will say, had this been 5 white lads and a 15-year-old Asian boy, and for exactly the same reason, because he was male and because he was Asian, my temper would be exactly the same. My anger would be exactly the same. There is no excuse and there's no place for it. It's an absolute disgrace. I can't believe how much this has been hidden. I can't believe how I didn't really know much about this story. There is when I mentioned the family friend, she was interviewed by a polarizing figure, let's say, who I think has been demonized by the press for years. And there was a documentary done. And I believe it was because it was this polarizing figure who did the interview, that's probably why that hasn't been shown more. Or maybe it was because it was the attack itself. I don't know. But I'm really hoping that this story will get out there. I'm hoping I'm making it clear that my anger isn't because of it was 5 Pakistani men and a white lad. Had it been the other way around, I would be just as annoyed and be just as disgusted. But the reason I'm more angry is the fact it does appear to have been brushed under the carpet. And I don't agree with that at all. But yeah, that was the heartbreaking Kriss Donald story. Oh, God. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much. Oh, God. Got myself rolled there. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Like I say, Tuesdays on my request evening, Thursdays stories I like to bring to you. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. But thank you for joining me. I appreciate you sticking around. And I'm back on Thursday. So thank you so much again. Thank you. Take care.